From KAMR Local 4 News, your local election headquarters, this is Politics Today.
The screwworm continues to migrate north from Mexico, how that pest is impacting the cattle industry in Texas. And after the Texas House passed public school funding, problems are starting to arise in the Senate. Good morning and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Jack Kessler. The United States has suspended Mexican imports of live cattle, horse, and bison due to what the United States Department of Agriculture is saying is the continued and rapid northward spread of the New World screwworm in Mexico. Now, according to the USDA, the import suspension will persist on a month-by-month basis until a significant window of containment is achieved. Now, they add that they will continue constant collaboration with Mexico, including a review of latest data and metrics in 2 weeks. The USDA said on Sunday, despite efforts, there has been an unacceptable northward advancement of screwworm, and additional action must be taken to slow the northern progression of the deadly parasitic fly.
Really, I think caused this reaction was that the fly had kind of escaped a narrower part of the country of Mexico, in southern Mexico, where it was going to be easier to control, and is now, we've seen a few cases in Oaxaca and Veracruz, which is further north than we had hoped.
Weingartner, Director of Government Relations with the Texas Cattle Feeders Association, says this suspension will have and has already had an impact.
Fed cattle, feeder cattle, and wholesale meat prices have all spiked today. Now, we don't know if that is a long-lasting impact, but certainly in the short run, it will be an impact on all three of those sectors. But it's not the only reason, right?
He adds it's a little bit unknown at this point how consumers will be affected.
It doesn't quite work as fast as you don't see that impact the next day after an action. But as I mentioned before, we're already at historic levels, historic prices for cattle and beef at wholesale, and that does eventually translate into the retail counter space. So yeah, I think that it will have an impact. Just the severity of the impact, we don't know yet.
Now, Mexico's Agriculture Secretary said on social media Sunday regarding the decision, "We don't agree with this measure, but we're confident we'll reach an agreement sooner rather than later." And Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said at a news conference that, quote, "We do not agree with this measure, and the Mexican government has been working on all fronts from the very first moment we were alerted to the screwworm." End quote. U.S. Senators Ben Ray Lujan and John Cornyn have introduced the Stop Screwworm Act earlier this week. It would allow funds from the Department of Agriculture to start building a sterile fly production facility. Decades ago, when the screwworm was bad, sterile male screwworm flies were released into some areas, which lowered the population. If passed, the U.S. would do that again after building a facility. The Trump administration is rolling back a Biden-era clean water rule to reduce the amount of PFAS in drinking water. PFAS is a cluster of man-made chemicals linked to chronic illness. It's found in an estimated 158 million Americans drinking water, according to the Environmental Working Group. Washington correspondent Raquel Martin has reaction.
Make America healthy again is now a hallmark of the Trump administration, but environmentalists say a decision to roll back regulations on drinking water is putting that pledge to test.
You certainly can't make America healthy again if you are putting toxins into the drinking water.
Melanie Benish with the Environmental Working Group is slamming the Trump administration's push to weaken regulations on forever chemicals known as PFAS. PFAS are toxic and linked to certain cancers, heart disease, and even birth defects.
Hundreds of communities across the country that have been drinking contaminated water for decades, I feel like the rug has been pulled out.
After studying the issue, last year Biden's EPA finalized rules limiting how much PFAS could be in Americans' drinking water. But the Trump administration argues the changes were illegal and burdensome. Now, they're seeking to scrap regulations on 4 of 6 PFAS compounds in the original rule.
I think there was sometimes they put regulations in place just to have regulations in place.
Michigan Republican Congressman Bill Huizenga says some PFAS are dangerous, but Biden went too far.
Did they really protect people? Did they stifle an industry?
Michigan Democratic Senator Alyssa Slonkin does not see it the same.
This is not an issue of overreach. This is an issue of health.
After the Flint water crisis, she says Michiganders deserve better.
We all should want to keep bad chemicals out of our water and to clean them up.
EPA wants to finalize rules by spring of 2026. Opponents expect legal challenges. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
New Mexico has some of the highest documented PFAS levels in the world. We know that the city of Clovis and rural Curry County has been suffering from PFAS pollution caused by Cannon Air Force Base. More than 3,600 cattle were put down after they consumed groundwater contaminated by PFAS. PFAS is shown to be linked to certain cancers, immune system suppression, developmental issues, reproductive effects, and more. Congressman Ronnie Jackson reintroduces legislation to help livestock producers impacted by the historic wildfires in our area. The Livestock Indemnity Program Enhancement Act would ask the Department of Agriculture to make additional payment rates for unborn livestock in animals that were pregnant when they died. Jackson says more than 12,000 cattle were lost due to the fires. Senator Ted Cruz has introduced similar legislation in the House. The STAR test may soon be no more. Details on the legislation passed this week in Texas and what the alternative might be. And while Texas is new to the school voucher program, another group is wanting to start their own similar program. The Texas House officially passed a bill Tuesday that would eliminate the STAR test. That as the state's standardized test that some elementary and middle school students take in April. The proposal would replace the STAR test with a new testing program some school districts are already using. Capitol correspondent Dylan McKim shows us how it works and why school district leaders across the state are supporting it.
Members, this bill eliminates the STAR test.
It's a rare sight on the House floor when Republicans and Democrats can agree on something. This session, House lawmakers found a common enemy in the STAR test.
This is good for kids, it's good for teachers, and it's great for parents.
Here's what would replace it. 3 smaller tests throughout the year, one in the beginning, the middle, and the end. Currently, the STAR test is taken in April, and results are not returned until 6 weeks later, when kids have already left the classroom for summer. The proposed testing program would provide results 1 day after each test. School leaders argue this will help teachers understand how to best help students during the school year.
Provides me, the teachers, our teachers, opportunities to sit together, look at the data, talk about instructional strategies that were used, which instructional strategy was better, and then actually apply that instructional strategy while I've got the kids in the classroom.
Some school districts already implement a similar testing program on top of the STAR test. On average, school leaders say they spend 18 days on testing to prepare for the STAR test, or 10% of the school year. Supporters say this proposal is a cost and time saver.
The number of testing days would be reduced by half, allowing schools to rededicate that time to additional learning opportunities for kids.
If approved, this new testing program would start in September, but it will have to get through the Senate.
What will it take to get this bill passed in the Senate?
And some lawmakers worry time is running out.
I believe that it is consistent throughout this chamber and the chamber to the east that one test, 1 day is not the future for Texas.
In Austin, I'm Dylan McKim.
The Senate already passed their version of the bill, but the 2 bills have a different rollout plan. The House's version would start in September, while the Senate version would start in 3 years. $8 billion of new public school funding is on the line in the closing weeks of the Texas legislature. The question at the Capitol right now is how to spend that money. A lot of debate is surrounding the basic allotment. It is the base level of funding for each student. School districts can use that money to pay for things like utilities and staff salaries. The proposal from the House would raise the basic allotment by $440. The Senate's version would only raise it by $55, but it would create a separate allotment dedicated to teacher pay. One education policy expert said it would free up the basic allotment to be used for other needs.
There are 1,000 different ways that you can spend money in school finance. Just because you're not solely putting money into the basic allotment doesn't mean that you're not doing other great things downstream in the formulas as well.
The Senate's proposal is in the midst of a hearing in the Education Committee. The Senate has until May 28th to pass its version of the bill. House Republicans propose setting aside $5 billion a year for a school voucher program. This is their budget reconciliation bill released earlier this week. If passed, private citizens would make charitable donations to scholarship granting organizations. The federal government gives those donors a 100% tax credit. The SGO would then distribute the money as scholarships for students. Most families would qualify for this scholarship. The Amarillo City Council starts their new political terms. We'll head over to that swearing-in ceremony. Plus, the council got to work quickly to explain what MUDs are. Those stories are next. The City of Amarillo has a new way for you to stay up to date on the levels out at the local Playa Lakes. The city's new monitoring site gives everyone a chance to see in real time the levels on local Playa Lakes. The site includes data of 8 lakes: Bennett, Lawrence, Martin, McCarty, McDonald, Playa 7, T-Anchor, and Willow Grove Lake. Officials hope this tool will help keep the public up to date on the changes that could impact their homes.
So a lot of really good information there that I think is informative to the public, but for our staff, what it helps us do is correlate what does a 2-inch rain do to Bennett Lake? What does a 1-inch rain do to Lawrence Lake? And be able to better predict how much capacity we have for different storms. So that's very exciting. Whereas now we kind of have an understanding of, about how much a lake will come.
Officials say the levels are updated in 15-minute intervals and includes rain gauges and cameras to capture as much data as possible. 4 new and returning Amarillo City Council members were sworn in this past week.
So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you, ma'am.
The city also canvassed the votes from May 3rd and ordered a runoff for Place 3. Mayor Cole Stanley was sworn in for another term. Tim Reed will be council member for Place 1. Councilmember Don Tips and Les Simpson will serve another term in Place 2 and 4, respectively. Place 3 is in a runoff. That's Councilmember Tom Sherlin against David Prescott. Runoff election day is June 7th. Early voting is May 27th to the 30th and June 2nd and 3rd. We interviewed both candidates before the May 3rd election. You can see those over on our website, myhighplains.com. The Amarillo City Council discussed the creation and regulation of municipal utility districts at last week's meeting. Municipal utility districts, or MUD, are government entities that provides core public services like water, sewer, and roads to areas 1 mile outside of the Amarillo City limits. MUDs are regulated by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and allows developers to build essential services. Developers can use special bonds to pay for infrastructure, making it easier to build bigger and more affordable housing. Property owners pay additional property taxes specifically to fund infrastructure development.
Sometimes there are misconceptions about MUDs that they might be created just sort of ad hoc, that you might wake up one day and you're living in a MUD. That is not the way that they're created. The landowner themselves has to bring forward the petition and request for it to be created.
MUD districts are governed by a 5-member board and must meet strict state regulations. How this will work is a landowner can petition for creating a MUD district. The developers must get consent from the city and then apply it to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality for approval. The City Council had multiple discussions on the MUD since the beginning of April. The city also hosted a public meeting on MUD, which included a Q&A session. House Republicans working through the weekend on the reconciliation bill. We'll hear from an area lawmaker on the worries about what's proposed and where the bill will go from here. After President Trump tasked lawmakers with reducing spending and finding cuts in the budget, the House and Senate aren't on the same page as to what cuts are needed. Experts find the bill as is would add about $5 trillion to deficits through 2034. The bill would slash taxes, the biggest savings going to wealthy people. It would put more money into the military and immigration, and it would make big cuts in health, nutrition, education, and clean energy programs. While lawmakers work through the weekend on this bill, Senate Republicans told the House on Thursday they wouldn't pass it without changes. Here's Congresswoman Teresa Leger Fernandez from New Mexico on how she sees this impacting her district.
We are very concerned about the Medicaid cuts and their impact in rural areas like my district. When they kick all of those people off of Medicaid, they're also saying you cannot then join the Affordable Care Act. So they're going to be uninsured. They're going to show up in our rural hospitals, and those rural hospitals are going to have to serve them in emergency rooms, and they're not going to be able to afford it. So the estimate is we are going to see closures of rural hospitals because of what Republicans propose. I'm very worried about hospitals in my district, like in Roosevelt County, in Curry County, because they have over 30% of their patients are on Medicaid. It's the same in West Texas. So this is something that's going to hurt eastern New Mexico, western Texas, my entire district, and any rural area in the country.
What do you say to Republicans who say that they're just trying to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse out of these programs, and that the Speaker said yesterday that they're not cutting Medicaid?
It's very simple. They are lying to the American public when say this is about waste, fraud, and abuse. This is about giving tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans. So while they want to bury patients under a mountain of paperwork, if you earn $1 million or more, you're going to get a tax break where you don't have to do a thing. So let me ask you, do you think it's fair to bury disabled, pregnant women, veterans under paperwork that is designed to kick you out of the system and then let the wealthiest just get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of tax benefits without doing a thing? That's what they're doing. That's why we are so opposed to it. They are penalizing the working families, the veterans, the disabled who need this health care in order to give tax breaks to the wealthiest and give them away for free. They don't have to do anything, and they just get hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Why do you think they're getting those tax cuts?
They're getting those tax cuts because Trump and Republicans have said they want to extend the 2017 Trump tax thing. Then we already know they're getting those tax cuts because they want to extend the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which benefited the wealthiest among us. And they're doing it again. They're repeating that. They're repeating their desire to benefit the wealthiest corporations and the millionaires and billionaires, except for this time they're doing it on the backs of hungry children and pregnant women.
How can Congress work to make these programs better?
We can always improve the way our federal programs work, but you don't do that by killing the patient, which is what they're doing. You know, you help the patient, right? And if Medicaid were a patient, what they're doing is basically the patient came in with a cold, and they're basically cutting off one of their limbs and letting them die. That's how bad this is.
Another subject on the tariffs. Today, Walmart announced it's raising prices in relation to the tariffs. How concerning is that for the people in your district?
My district are terrified about the tariffs for two reasons. One, it's going to raise the cost. And second, we export a lot. We export about $3 billion of goods to Mexico, and we only import about $2 billion. So we actually have a $1 billion trade benefit with Mexico, as an example. So Mexico, that trade is going to get harmed, all kinds of other things. So it's not just what it's doing to prices, it's also what it's doing to our economy and our industries. New Mexico is going to get hit both ways.
The House Budget Committee met Friday, and the bill failed. The House wants to vote on it before Memorial Day. While adding to the deficit, the bill is expected to save $715 billion, but lead to more than 8 million people being without health care. We'll wrap things up after this. Pleasant Valley Elementary hosted hosting a special walkthrough for alumni, including myself, before the school permanently closes their door. So this happened. As we have previously reported, Pleasant Valley, Park Hills, and Sunrise Elementary are all being closed at the end of the school year. The Bulldog Social invited Pleasant Valley Elementary alum to walk the halls for the school one last time.
I've got to learn so much more about the school because I've had older generations come back and they've told me, hey, there weren't steps by the stage then, we didn't have the gym here, this, that, and just kind of getting to learn the great history of this school. So getting to learn from the grandparents that are here that have grandkids still here, all the way down to just old alumni that wanted to come back and they cherish the school and the times they had here.
All three closing schools are being consolidated into other Amarillo campuses beginning the start of the next school year. You can step to the latest political news with us over our website, myhighplains.com. You can check us out on Alexa and Instagram and like us on Facebook. This is Politics Today. I'm Jack Kessler.